Hello everyone and welcome to Empowering the Conscious Business Evolution Talk with me, Antonina Manev, for some fresh, thought-provoking and liberating conversations about inspiring the sparks of innovation and evolution and growing a bigger and a wider world of ethically successful and consciously evolving business environment. For those who tune in for the first time, I'm the founder of Visions Inspire Strategic Business Growth Consultancy. As a business strategist, my focus is on turning visions into profitable businesses, be it for startups or established businesses. So in my area of work, evolving the business consciousness is a key element. You can find out more about my inspiring work by visiting the website www.visionsinspire.com. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel or like my Facebook page or connect on LinkedIn with me. Business owners work with me, looking to increase usually their business cash flow and profits and create a secure financial future so they fully enjoy a greater lifestyle and balance. However, along the way, the main obstacle appears to be the uncomfortable mindset of conformity, which accepts limitations in business making and development, or even growing in order to fit in an old custom conventional framework of business making that holds them back, and all that at the expense of their true identity. But how we even start to break up these frames? Well, we'll have to try. In my interviews, video or audio, I will be introducing you to exceptional business leaders, owners, and creators who have reached great success in what they do, not because they worked hard to fit in, but by challenging the status quo and constantly innovating themselves and their businesses, by searching back to their authentic roots to follow the person, business, environment connection, and by taking approaches of consciously evolving to align with a higher social and earth value through their creativity, identity, and co-creative forward thinking. So be prepared, all my guests have left valuable tips and inspirational words of wisdom for you to take and do your best to outshine the conventional and grow yourself and business aligned with higher values. All their interviews are playing on the Visions Inspire YouTube podcast channel. Happy listening and happy learning and growing. And then I start with, hello everyone, it is me, Antonina Manev, and welcome to Empowering the Conscious Business Evolution show today in this gloomy day. But across is sitting a very special person. It is Jeffrey Shaw, coming all the way from Miami. Well, Jeffrey, you're not in my home, but it feels like you are. I love Zoom. So welcome, Jeffrey. And
Thank you.
please, everyone, welcome, Jeffrey. Oh, that's the
Thank you so
applause.
much. It is the nice part about Zoom. It does kind of feel like we get to hang out together in one another's homes. So I'm okay with the adaptation that we've all had to go through.
I love it. I love Zoom. Jeffrey, I would like to introduce you to our listeners, but maybe you can do that yourself better. I can see behind you, and all I can tell that Jeffrey, guys, Jeffrey is the author of an amazing book which is called Self-Employed Life, and he talks about the little people like you, like me, like everybody else, who need to go through their changes. But that's not your complete journey, is it? Because you've done the second book, which is Lingo, which is a very important one to learn to recognize the secret language of our customers so that we can adjust our branding and our offers to what they expect. And this is exactly what I preach in my work with small businesses. But would you like to tell me more about how did you get from a leading photographer, guys, this is a photographer, a leading photographer, to working with businesses to help them do better. How did that happen? What happened there? People don't do that your age.
Yeah. Well, and for me, it's, you know, as often is the case for us, like our lives go through these transitions and their own pace and connect the dots. And we don't necessarily think our own lives or the journey of our lives is particularly interesting, but other people find it interesting. And that's been the case. Like I get asked that all the time. Like, how did you go from being a photographer to an author? And you know, I'd say I continue to unpack the connections. And I think that's one of the lessons we all go through on our journeys in life and also in business and success is to connect the dots, you know, and actually in the connecting the dots is what other people find really fascinating. It's what in my work, I refer to it as your unique perspective. Your unique perspective is the unique way you see what you do, because let's face it, none of us anymore, hardly any of us anyway, are alone in our chosen fields, right? There's other people doing what we do, whether it's coaching or whatever industry you're in. Very few people are in an industry alone. So yes, there's quote unquote competition, but I never see it as competition because you can bring to it your unique perspective. Your unique perspective is the combination of so many dots in your life. It's your education, it's your work experience, it's relationships. It's the connection of so many dots that no two people can possibly have the exact same perspective. So what's been interesting for me is to realize how, you know, when I first started coaching others, so I've been a portrait photographer for affluent families for 37 years now. 25 years into that career is when I started getting the bug that I wanted to support other people in developing their business. So I initially started coaching other photographers. So when asked this question, as you've asked before, as you've asked what I've been asked that in the past, one of the things that stood out to me is as a portrait photographer for the most affluent families in the country, even though I didn't come from that, I came from lower middle class upbringing. I thought the lesson I had to give to the world was by example, right? I thought the biggest lesson I had to offer and how I could help people was to teach other business owners how to start a business, how to break into a tough market, how to serve the affluent. But honestly, Antonina, what I've learned is it's even bigger and deeper than that. That the way I really help business owners today is actually just wired into my being, partly as a photographer, but also what led me to being a photographer, right?
So,
I see what other people don't see, which is the root of being a photographer. Most people walk by things as a photographer, I'm hired to capture moments that I see that other people can't see. And that relates directly to how I support business people. I can see what's broken in their business. I can see what I call the invasive species of their ecosystem in their business that they can't see. I can see what's marketable in them that they can't see in themselves. I can see what the world wants from them that they can't see value in yet. So at the end of the day, the fact that I've been a photographer for so many decades is exactly what makes me unique in the work that I do today as a coach and the founder of the Self-Employed Business Institute. I mean, I founded an entire educational platform to provide self-employed business owners with the education that they don't get in their trades. And it's largely based on the fact that I've walked this path and I can see what they can't see and I can help them see it in themselves as well. So I think the lesson is, as strange as the dots can seem in our lives, that's actually your unique differentiator. So I encourage everybody to dig to connect the dots in your own life, just as I have.
I love the way you put it, because although you gave me the standard, layout of why the answer, why do you do what you do and why you have chosen to do this and all this, actually what you accented on was the being. So you were led in a way by your curiosity, to satisfy that value of curiosity. And I think that's kind of the essence of every leap that we make, every change, when we change directions in our lives. Because I never thought I would do what I'm doing right now. I started as a teacher, And then I went into tax and finance and all these, the muscle boys, the big corporates. And then I was led by, like you, by my interest. And as you said, people are, although there is competition, there is no competition because you're unique.
You're unique beings, and
And
one of the examples I often get is if you look at any family, right, there could be siblings in the same family will have a different perspective on their childhood. Right. It's
exactly.
because it's what you lay on it. Right. They may have all experienced the same things, and yet their take from those experiences is different. So there is
Yeah.
no competition in your chosen field if you do the inner work to develop, well, how do I see what I do differently than other people? What do I bring to the table that other people aren't bringing? And I love what you've brought up about curiosity. And I would even say, you know, there's almost unconscious curiosity, I think, in a
Exactly.
way, right?
Yeah.
So there's curiosity, there's unconscious curiosity, which I think comes from nature. I did a show, a podcast on my own podcast quite a while ago that still gets talked about. People still bring it up because the title of it, the topic of it was something like the goal paradox. Because I've always found there to be a bit of a paradox about goals. And here we are at the beginning of the year 2022, everybody's setting goals. I've always, particularly for self-employed and small business owners, I think there's an inherent paradox in goal setting because how do you, I mean, we're told and motivated to set big goals, but you also have to be careful in setting up big goals to not be setting yourself up for disappointment because we're brutal on ourselves if we don't meet our goals. It's inherent in this success mindset that you want to set big goals, you set big goals, but if we don't meet them, it's also inherent in the self-employed mindset or success mindset that we're going to beat ourselves up for not meeting those goals. So there's an inherent paradox in goal setting. My solution to that paradox is what I refer to as follow what's unfolding. And I think this lesson, I did this episode probably 2 or 3 years ago about this goal paradox, and that the solution to it was follow what's unfolding. And to this day, it resonates more now than ever because of the way the world has been turned around upside down over the last couple of years. That I don't know how we go about setting goals because we don't know what 2022 is going to look like. We don't even know what February is going to look like, right? So the curiosity you speak of to me comes from the if you are open to following what's unfolding, if you're open to, and I think we sometimes forget how complex we are as humans. Like we can have goals, you can have your focus on a direction, and you can also hold the space and openness to follow what's unfolding, because that I believe is where the best opportunities lie. So often we end up doing things focusing. Hey, when I wrote my book, The Self-Employed Life, it came out in May. I had no intention of starting a school, right? I had no intent, but once the book was out and with the number of inquiries I was getting that people wanted a deeper learning, I was actually talking to a friend of mine and I said to her, I said, the problem in the world of business is I've been coaching business owners for 15 years and they're all really good at what they do, but they're all in an industry that nobody's teaching them how to make money at what they do. And that's a problem. We need to solve that. And I myself, I'm trained as a coach, as a speaker, as a podcast host. I've got all these these trade trainings, but nobody's ever taught me how to make money at it. And I've had to figure it out on my own, which I happen to be good at. But I said this to her and she said, well, why not you? I said, I guess why not me? So next thing I knew, I was starting a school, which we launched in September called the Self-Employed Business Institute, where it's a 5-month program where we teach people how to make money at their chosen trade. And it's a variety of industries. Again, if I didn't follow what's unfolding, that never would have happened. It literally unfolded from a conversation. It unfolded from launching my book into the world and realizing the world wanted more. But it wasn't part of a lot of people think it was part of a master plan. I'm like, nope, I don't claim to be that smart. Nope, there was no master plan. It was just follow what's unfolding to see what's and what opportunities are in front of you. That's the curiosity, I believe.
And I think people's perceptions, or not the people's perceptions, but their consciousness kind of has changed over the past couple of years and led them to follow exactly that model, because we are in a situation we can't control. So all we can do is just follow, and whatever comes, do the best of it, out of it.
Yeah. And
And
there's been such tragic loss as there have been, many tragedies. I always say, good or bad, this is like my third rodeo because I was a New Yorker living in New York City when 9/11 happened. And then, of course, I've been in business long enough to have gone through the Great Recession and then this pandemic. And as soon as this pandemic hit, I mean, I actually said a lot of people were thinking very short term, like this is going to be over. And I kept saying, I'd say 7 to 9 months, you're going to have to buckle down. Never did I would imagine it'd be 2 years, right? Who could? But the fact with tremendous loss, but I actually think it's a huge, so every crisis has been a huge social shift and often for the better. And I hate to
fingers
say it that way.
crossed.
Yeah. I mean, the the as a photographer serving the most affluent people in the country, the Great Recession, which hit them terribly. I had very, very wealthy clients who lost everything.
Mm.
It hit them terribly. You know what it shifted was their values and what was important to them. The materialism wasn't as important. I think even 9/11, I've always felt like tip the switch towards the Great Recession because 9/11 as an attack on the World Trade Center, the hub of financial being in the United States, those were my clients. My clients are all Wall Streeters. And I saw their values shift. Their values shifted from materialism to caring about their family and caring about the people around them. And they suddenly started downsizing and living differently. And I truly believe that to an extent, when you have the wealthiest people in a country no longer spending as much money, it tripped along with many other circumstances. But I think that's what tripped the recession. Okay. So there's a value chain. And what I think what we're seeing now, I've actually been referring to it for the last couple of years as a walking meditation. Okay. The
I
level
like
of
that.
consciousness, people are walking through their lives almost as if they're walking in a walking meditation because suddenly now I've been at a bit of an advantage. I've always been a complete germaphobe. I've never touched elevator buttons. I don't touch handrails on escalators. Like, my biggest pet peeve prior to the pandemic was when you were in a nice restaurant with a beautiful leather bound menu and they would set the
Oh
menu down
gosh.
on the plate.
Oh gosh, don't
I was
start
like,
me on that.
right?
Oh,
I was like, why are
yeah,
you
yeah,
putting
I
this
know.
dirty menu on my plate?
Ah,
So I would always return the plate. I was always, and this is before I've always been a germaphobe. But what we're seeing now is people consciously paying attention to everything they're doing. They're consciously putting those masks on when they're going inside. They're consciously hitting elevator buttons with their elbows. They're consciously making decisions in the moment. Is this person someone I feel safe hugging or not?
mm,
That's a walking meditation. Like the level of consciousness that's been raised in our world is unlike anything I've ever seen. Perhaps for negative reasons, but how is this training our brains? How is this training us to be more conscious in the future? How is this training us to be more empathetic, consciously empathetic to people around us?
yes.
And I think there can be a very positive outcome to that level of raised consciousness.
I really hope so. And that's that, I have explained to several people. They keep asking me, how did you come up with this empowering the conscious business evolution? I don't know. It just came. Yeah, I'm a very
Yeah.
shy person, but it just went out there, and I had no idea where it came from.
Yeah.
But apparently, subconsciously, I was working on it. I was looking for answers because I have noticed the things that you've just mentioned, and these are the big shifts, and
Yeah.
the hope that we can evolve consciously into a better business making, human making, relationship making, earth making,
Mhm.
all that.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's a
And
deep.
it's all those things. I just want to Antonina, I want to kind of run with what you just said. So it's so important. It's all of those things. The people that are drawn to working with me directly as a coach or joining the Self-Employed Business Institute, always what they say that they see is that I kind of toe a line between being very practical and strategic in business and very soulful. The tagline on my own podcast called The Self-Employed Life, the tagline on our podcast is business with a soul. Right. So I'm always, because I don't think it's an either or. I think it is particularly when you're self-employed, your level of success when you're self-employed is relative to your personal development. It begins with self for a reason. right? So there's an interconnectedness between who you are as a person and your success. So hey, I'm all for supporting people to make money. Like I believe in capitalism. I believe in businesses being successful. More than anything, I believe in people having the financial stability and
Yes.
abundance to create the life of their dreams. I've always said every
Yeah.
business decision I've ever made has been a life decision first. So I believe in supporting people to have the financial success to create the life of their dreams. And I believe that doing so offers you an opportunity to grow as a person and to be a better person and to be a better contributor to the world. It's not an either or. And having been in businesses I have for 37 years now, I actually refer to this in my book, The Self-Employed Life, as the new business model. Because the old business, and this is the conscious evolution I think that you're speaking of, right?
Yes.
The old business model was based on hard work,
Mm.
hustling, and forceful sales. Okay.
Yes.
It worked. It worked in
Okay.
the 80s and 90s. It worked. Whether it was like, I mean, it just worked. It was, it worked. It doesn't work today by a
No,
long
no.
shot. The moment you come across as salesy or pushy, people back up. People today make an energetic decision about who to do business with more than they ever have. Therefore, you have to be conscious of the energy you're putting out. You have to be conscious as a business owner of the connections you're creating, because that's what people are responding to. People, the phrase I like to use is that people buy into you before they buy from you.
Correct.
Okay. So they have to first feel your genuineness, your authenticity. We see it every day. People will choose. I have a lot of companies I won't do business with because I don't like their values. And there are other companies I specifically choose to do business with and often will even be willing to pay more for what they have to offer because of their values. That's the new business model. The new business model, the old business model was one of kind of outbound marketing
Mm-hmm.
and an outbound push. The new business model, the conscious evolution that you speak of, is inbound. It's about attracting. It's about you
Yes.
being the attractor energetically. In both my book and the Self-Employed Business Institute, the base of the program is a system I teach called hug marketing, and
I like
it
that.
turns the world of marketing upside down because I think marketing funnels are creepy.
I hate them. I hate them.
I hate the
Oh.
term. I say, just look at the shape of it. Like a marketing funnel implies that you're open-minded and open-hearted at the top, and then you're going to squeeze people through a small hole as they progress through your system. I think it's a horrible energy. So I created the hug marketing journey, which is a series of concentric circles,
Mm.
and people are the lurkers, I call them, are on the outside of those circles. They're watching what you're doing, but you
Yeah.
don't know who they are yet. And as a business, what you do is you systematically create the online assets and the intrigue to take people one step circle closer at a time. The goal is the hug. The goal is not just gaining them as a clients is one circle out from the center. That's when you've acquired a client.
Mm.
But the real goal is to turn those clients into hug clients, the clients that if you were to meet them in person, you can't imagine not hugging them because they are the biggest advocates of your work, because they're loyal to you.
Yeah.
So what I've done is I've turned the whole idea of marketing upside down from this marketing funnel being a pushy, squeeze them through a hole mentality to, hey, what do I need to do and how do I need to behave and what assets do I need to have online to attract people from the outermost realms to keep coming in until if I were to meet them in person, I would give them a hug, which I do often. If I'm traveling and I meet podcast listeners, it almost always starts with a hug because we feel like we know each other. And that to me is the goal of marketing today.
Okay, so I'm looking forward to hugging you.
Count on it. I have actually a client just yesterday, a coaching client let me know they're going to be in Miami in April, and she's notoriously not a hugger.
Oh,
And I said to
God.
her, I said, get
Okay.
ready. I'm a hugger. Like you don't stand a chance. She goes,
Oh,
I
you can
relent.
get one of those prosthetic hands and just do pat, pat here, pat.
Exactly. Yep. Well,
I,
all's good. We'll be
yeah,
hugging.
like it.
It's hard to
Yeah,
turn down.
yeah. I really actually these were going to be some questions around what you've just said, but you just went and yes. Yeah, went and answered most of these curiosities because we're talking and you're teaching yes the hug marketing, the hard approach, and your authenticity. And I'm so amazed and I'm so hopeful that now people are more focused around authenticity versus conformity, which was the old age. However, there is still a lot of work to be done. There is a lot of work to be done. I was going to ask you why you choose self-employed people only. What about partnerships? Okay, not partnerships because they're still self-employed separately from a tax point of view. But what about companies, you know, bigger companies, and why self-employed only?
Because as you had said right in the introduction, I don't love the term, but we're the small people, right? And if you get down to, you know, and I do a lot of inner work on myself, and this is what, you know, both my book and the Business Institute are unique in that there's a lot of coaching. There's a lot of personal development, which is not typical of a business book, right? Business books typically jump right into the strategies. I philosophically have always taught business in a way. It's like, you know, I don't want to be another guru to give you a bunch of strategies to call and motivate you to hustle, to work harder, because you know what? That's exactly why you feel like a hamster on the wheel, because you're just applying more and more in action. You're running in place. But the problem is that nobody's taught you the inner work to shift who you are on the inside so that the effort pays off, because actually it's not meant to be hard. Right? What makes it hard is that you're fighting against yourself as opposed to doing the inner work so that the effort you put in pays off. Okay. So I have always, you know, focused with my clients and our students and doing a lot of the inner work. And I actually lost your initial question. Oh, self-employed.
Anyway,
Why self-employed? So we're the, you know, like I say, I don't love the term, but we're the little people. And if I've done the inner work to realize my absolute core value. And I literally have done work. His name is Brent Menswar. His book is called Black Sheep. It's identifying your 5 core values. My number one value in life, which relates to business, is acceptance. And part of how you can realize your value when you focus on or learn your primary value, one of the ways you know it's true is because you also can pay attention to what really upsets you. And what really upsets me more than anything is seeing people not be accepted, not being accepted because of the color of their skin, their sexual orientation, their height, like whatever, their gender, like whatever it is, drives me crazy to see people not be accepted for who they are. And honestly, that's the driver of why I stand behind self-employed people. It drives me crazy to see hardworking business owners who are building a business to support their family constantly get ignored by their government when they need help financially, constantly being ignored or disrespected as not being serious business people by bigger companies, being pushed out of Main Street because chains are coming in. It absolutely drives me crazy to see small business owners, the smallest of small business owners, like self-employed people, businesses of one. It drives me absolutely crazy to see them get ignored and overlooked. So knowing that was my deepest passion, and then realizing the most obvious thing was, of course, this is who I should help in the world because it's all I've ever known. I've never had a traditional job. I've never received a paycheck from anyone. Like I tell the story in my book. I started selling eggs door to door when I was 14 years old. I've been self-employed my entire life. Of course, this is who I am here to serve because I get them. I get the path. I get the journey. So, you know, I have dabbled and done some work in corporations. I just find it, and I think there's something I can bring to corporations in that, and I'm looking at the idea of bringing like a kind of a self-employed mindset to companies. But they're too slow to change for me. What I love about working with, yeah, it drives me crazy. Like,
yeah, me too.
I can't deal with the bureaucracy. Like, I like working with independent business owners because you know what? They'll change their lives tomorrow. They'll change
Yes.
their habits tomorrow. Like, I love those people. Like that, those
Yes.
are the people that impress me. Being a CEO of a big company doesn't impress. I've been photographing CEOs for my whole, my adult life for 37 years. I've been photographing all those CEOs. They're wonderful and they're kind and they're impressive in their own way, but nothing impresses me more than somebody decides to start a business that's going to pay their mortgage, put their kids through college. I mean, that's impressive. And that's who I stand by.
Thank you. Oh gosh. Right. I totally agree with you about the corporate and the self-employed. But I have another question for you. And I said to you that there is a lot of work to do. And we're talking about these shifts. However, there are still barriers in front of mindsets or people or their circumstances, the small people, the self-employed, that prevents them from reaching those messages. And why do you think small businesses continue to live with the conviction that they need to do all by themselves, and by following what the mass do? What is it from your meetings, because you have spoken to them, me too, but it is always different. Why do you, it is always difficult to take them out of that space and put them in the creative space? Why do you think that happens?
Yeah. So I'll answer that in two ways. One is the entire reason why I wrote my book. And the second is, I think, the solution that I've come to observe. So the reason I wrote the book is, I actually set out to write it. Talk about follow what's unfolding. I actually was writing a different book when I got clarity about who I really needed to write this book for, with self-employed people. So I shifted. The content was kind of the same, but I shifted, and it came from an observation. And the observation was, and also this came about in a conversation with somebody where I was saying, for decades, I've been asking self-employed people why they became self-employed, and everybody has the same answer, right? Anytime I've asked somebody, why did you become self-employed? Everybody says, oh, I wanted to control my future. I wanted to control my destiny, or I wanted to control the hours I work. And I said, huh. So then I look at them and I say, and how's that working for you? And everybody laughs because, but we all have this impression we're going into business for ourselves to control our future. And then we realize we're in uncontrollable circumstances. Okay. So, but I realize my success in business for my own businesses, as well as those that I've coached, I actually had I had a solution to that. As much of a solution as you can have. And it's what I refer to and I teach, called the self-employed ecosystem. The problem is nobody had ever taught an ecosystem, how being self-employed is an ecosystem. Because when you're self-employed, the old adage that it's business is business, don't take it personal, doesn't apply to us. It's all personal. Okay. We take it personal and our lives are integrated. So it inevitably has to be an ecosystem. And the three parts of the ecosystem are your personal development, right? Because again, you will only be as successful as far as you personally develop your own mindsets. Like you'll only receive success to the degree that you believe you deserve that success. So you therefore have to work on the deserving part first. Okay. So personal development. The second part of the ecosystem is the business strategies. It's taking the right actions for your size business. Most business in the world is transactional and it's big business. If we try to model that, we're going to fall on our faces because our businesses are relationship based, not transactional. It's all about the relationship build. And as small businesses, we need different strategies, different size strategies. The third part is what I refer to as the daily habits and mindsets. That's the sustainability part, right? So I don't want to just make a promise that people are going to be successful. When you're self-employed, you're in it for the long haul. So I also want to make sure you're able to sustain your success, which comes really from daily habits that sustain a consistent mindset, because it's inevitably a roller coaster. It's an emotional roller coaster being self-employed. The only way we manage it is we have to have the daily habits that create a consistent mindset. So you just you take the hit and you keep on going, because we don't want you to give up. You're in it for the long haul. So those three parts of the ecosystem are, integrated and essential. And that's the entire motivation I wrote the book. Now, to the other answer to your question, as I said, an observation I had, and this truly has become, if there was a key to self-employed success, this is the key. It's the difference between whether you operate silo-minded or whether you operate as part of an ecosystem. That's why in my book, one of the first chapters in the book, I break down the difference between what we call ourselves. Do we call ourselves an entrepreneur? Do we call ourselves a small business? Do we call ourselves a solopreneur? Do we call ourselves self-employed? I'm a huge proponent and an advocate for changing the way we refer to ourselves to being self-employed. Calling ourselves as entrepreneurs is kind of cool, but it also sounds like you could be in between jobs. Like it doesn't mean anything.
A flirt. I
right?
call them flirts.
Exactly. Solopreneur is what a lot of people refer to them as. And I want people to stop calling themselves solopreneur because you're not in this alone. And that actually is what's holding you up. So what I mean by silo-minded is the people that struggle, continue to struggle, tend to think they're in it alone. They're silo-minded. They're the ones that their website needs to be improved, so they try to do it themselves. That's not their area of expertise. They try to do all their own bookkeeping. And it's more than delegation, right? That everybody's heard enough messages about delegation. Telling people to delegate when it costs money to delegate often just falls on deaf ears. What I want to not fall on deaf ears, and the message I really want people to hear, is the difference between thinking silo-minded and thinking part of an ecosystem. And here's the bottom line, Antonina. If you believe in your value as an expert in your field and that you should be hired, how can you expect people to hire you for your expertise if you're not willing to hire other people for their expertise? If you're silo-minded and you think you're also a bookkeeper, you think you're also a web designer, you energetically are being an imposter. You're energetically telling people asking people to hire you because you're a specialist in something, but meanwhile, you're not willing to hire the experts in other fields. It can't work. It's energetically mismatched. Own your expertise, own your value, be willing to charge your full value, get hired the expert, and do the same for others. Hire others that are experts in the things that you need. And then you're operating in an integrated ecosystem of the world, and you will succeed. It's the key
Totally
right?
agree with you.
Yeah.
But and then very little self-employed person tells you, but how can I afford that?
You can't afford not to, right?
Exactly.
And I don't mean to,
but
right? And I don't mean to be glib
afford...
about it. Yep. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I don't mean to be glib about it, but if we keep telling people you need to delegate, you need to delegate. The only way your business is going to grow is to delegate. We get that. But delegation compared to expensive money sometimes doesn't match up. The difference is the energy. But like when sometimes that doesn't sink in. But when I point out to people that if you don't hire people to do things for you, how can you expect people to hire you for what you do? That's when it sinks. I'm like, it's like karma at work here, right? It just isn't going to happen. That's your stop block. Like that, you can't afford not to hire people for the support you need if you want people to hire you for your expertise. It just won't happen. You're energetically setting yourself up to be an imposter. You're portraying yourself as an expert worthy of being hired, but you're not willing to do the same.
Absolutely, totally agree with that. And I usually make the metaphor about driving a car and having a manual, but we don't end up having a manual for driving our businesses, do we? We don't have that manual. No one has it, but people still go and invest their lives. It is just like, becoming a parent. You don't get a manual. And you totally screw up your kids' lives. End up no manual. But we have manual for a car.
Yeah.
And we have a
license. And in some ways the manual is there. It's a matter of, working with getting the help that you need. That's why I'm a coach, and I feel like sometimes coaches, and believe me, there are plenty of false coaches, and because it's an uncertified field, certification is not required. And I have over 1,000 hours of training as a coach and more thousands of hours coaching people than I can possibly count. But so there are some false coaches, false gurus, etc. But one comment, like my clients all tend to be, I like to say, like of a certain age. It's a broad range, but they're typically between like 35 and 65, right? It's a broad range, but they're not kids. They're not 20-year-olds. They're people that tend to have life in motion and they have something on the line. And what I find is they could possibly get to where they want to go on their own, but they also recognize they don't want to take 10 years to learn that.
Exactly.
Right. And that's my point. Like, why I actually just said to somebody yesterday in an email message, she reached out about possibly joining the Business Institute. And I read through what she wrote. As I do, I read between the lines, and I wanted to point out to her what I see as a problem. And she's someone who's got a side business going while she has a full-time job. And she's expressing a great deal of frustration. And, and I pointed out to her, I said, what a lot of people don't point out is the power of discouragement. I said, my fear for you is that if you don't start getting results for the effort you're putting into your side business, which you hope someday will be your full business, if you don't start getting results, you're going to get discouraged and you're just going to bow out and stay in your full-time job. And I know in your heart that's not what you want. I said, so I want to encourage you to join the Business Institute so we can get you results sooner than the point you get discouraged. And right. So there's a timeliness to this. Like we're humans. And I feel like 3 to 5 years of trying really hard at something and not getting signs of hope, signs of results, you're going to give up. And then, your dream has been lost, and chances are people have lost out on receiving the gifts that you have to offer. So I'm all about the speed of results. Like, how quickly can we see to it that we can get the results that you need, because that's the fuel that keeps you going. And then the momentum creates itself and it builds on it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that was the second part of my question. Do we still have time?
I have all the time you need.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So we're talking about the small businesses and their conviction that they have to do everything themselves. But what is it that keeps them keeps them stuck onto old norms and frames while the world of business is moving so fast? It's a deeper notion there,
but what keeps them stuck? I mean, there's so many things there. One is, as I said, I think what I find gets a lot of people stuck is being silo-minded, particularly when things become challenging, right? We can kind of narrow into ourselves when things like the world has been challenging, which often is not a good idea, right? To narrow in. The other, what I have in my coaching and the way that I coach my students, we actually start with exercises to help them. This is so contradictory to the way people think, but I'm telling you, it works. If other ways worked, I wouldn't have been seeking for a better way, right? And in a lot of ways, I don't think the traditional model for motivation works, particularly in business, particularly for self-employed people. Dangling carrots, right?
I hate that. The carrot and the stick. Oh my God.
Yeah. And I always joke that, it's like, so often when I meet people initially, they always feel like their big breaker is around the corner. And I'll look at them and say, and it feels like somebody keeps moving the damn corner, right? Like the corner keeps moving. Like my big break is around the corner. So I've struggled with the root of motivation and just felt for self-employed business owners, and probably for most people, typical motivation doesn't work. So the work that we do in the Business Institute initially is I help the students get really clear on what they want to get away from. Because you know what you want to get away from is true motivation.
Exactly.
Right? If you are truly sick and tired of barely getting by financially, it's like the proverbial rock bottom. It's not until you are sick and tired of your current circumstances that you're actually going to do something to change it that will stick. Okay. So I help the students, like, what is it that you really, maybe it's, I'm so tired of working harder than the results I'm getting. Even, believe me, and I work with plenty of students that are financially doing extremely well, but they're sick and tired of how hard they're working and saying it's got to be an easier way, right? How can we, and then I help them, how can we scale out their business? How can we hire a supportive team? How can we often it's a mindset shift, right? Often it's a mindset shift from what I refer to
Control.
as leaning into
Control.
and trust. And I think it's
Yes,
trust.
control
I think
and
a lot of
trust.
ways it's trust. Yep.
Yeah.
It's trusting that, and not just in yourself, it's trusting in others. And it's trusting that at the end of the day, there's some force working on your behalf, whatever you want to identify that force. But I have so many entrepreneurs that tell me, it's like, oh, no, I trust other people. I was like, really? Because you operate as if the weight of the world is on your shoulders. And if you, as a self-employed business owner, operate as if the weight of the world is on your shoulders, you will only be as successful as what you can carry. And there's your limitation. So I focus first on helping my students get really clear on what they want to get away from, which is the change they really are committed to making. And like I said, maybe it's financial, maybe it's working too hard, maybe it's sacrificing their personal life for their business. But we start with, what is it that you really want to get away from? And that's the motivation. I often compare it to, if you're a competitive swimmer, that's the jump off the edge of the pool, right? The momentum is the strokes that you take when you're in the water. But you know what? It first has to start with a push away. Every competitive swimmer starts from a push off the edge of the pool. So what is it that you want to push off from, so that we can get clear on that, and then we can create the systems and motivation to keep going forward?
That's a fantastic approach. I never thought about that from that angle, because I usually discount the motivation again, discount the being pushed, and allowing people to sense what they're pulled by, what pulls them, because that's what wakes you up in the morning. But I love it. I love
Let me
it.
tell you, do you want me to share with you how I learned that? It's crazy. I mean, it's always been, as most things, like I'm again, going right back to my roots as a photographer, I'm a masterful observer. I just, I observe everything. I watch everything. So I'm always learning things. So I took up sea kayaking during the pandemic, and I was writing my book, but as a way of getting out of the apartment and being safe, I live on the ocean in Miami, and we took up sea kayaking. Best social distancing activity there is. You're out in the middle of the ocean away from people. And my partner and I, it's a 2-person kayak, and he's in the back, I'm in the front, entirely because I'm more flexible, so I can cross my legs better. So he's in the back, I'm in the front. And I realized as we're kayaking, there were so many lessons, but one of the lessons I learned is the difference between pushing and pulling, which has everything to do with motivation, because motivation has always been taught as pulling. It's the dangling carrot. It's setting big goals to pull you towards the goal, right? But I realized in a 2-person, right? Exactly. And I realized in a 2-person kayak, me being in the front, if he stopped rowing, we came to a standstill, because I'm trying to pull the whole weight of the kayak behind me. It's like carrying baggage with you, right? We would come to a complete stop at the kayak, because it was a lot more effort for me in the front trying to pull the kayak against the ocean current. But other way around, if I stopped paddling and he's in the back, we kept moving forward. The momentum was still there. And I realized that's the difference between a push and pull. Motivation has been taught as a pull, when really what keeps the momentum going forward is the push, which is why I help people get clear on what is it that you want to push away from? What is it that the change that you want to, what is it that, right? What is it that you want to get away from? What is it that you're pushing away? At least is the starting stage of creating change. And it's the only thing I've seen that sticks. It keeps moving forward when you get really clear on the change you want to make and what you want to get away from, what you want to push off from as your starting point.
Beautiful. Love it. Okay, can you tell, you explained about briefly about the Self-Employed Institute, Business Institute, but you also are organizing, I think I saw that, the Self-Employed Summit.
Yeah, that's coming up.
Oh gosh, I love your smile, because suddenly
well,
tell me more.
Yeah, we did it in 2021, and it was actually part of my book launch. I had I had this idea that I go to plenty of summits, different conferences, and I always, again, as we self-employed people always experience, we always feel like we have to pick and choose what applies to us, right? We're constantly in a position of taking in all the information in the world, all the options, and then filtering it down to what works for us. Okay, it's a lot of work. So I decided that I wanted to create a 2-day virtual summit that was specific for self-employed people, to provide them with the business strategies that are the right size for them, the mindsets they need, the daily habit practices that are actually effective. So as part of my book launch for the Self-Employed Life, we did this 2-day Self-Employed Summit prior to the book launch. And it was a huge hit, bigger than I anticipated. Like, people really needed what was
To
offered. And
be, yeah.
we had 10 speakers. Like I said, it was all virtual. We had a moderator who kept it entertaining, but the speakers were all, I worked so closely with all the speakers when they crafted their presentations to make sure that the information that was delivered was right sized for self-employed business owners.
Yes.
And the connections were just beautiful. So I had no follow what's unfolding. I thought it was a one-shot deal, but it wound up being so successful. We're doing it again this year, 2022. It's February 7th and 8th.
7th and 8th.
People, February 7th and 8th, they can find out more at SelfEmployedSummit.com. The admission is purchasing of the book, which you can do as paperback, audio, or Kindle version. So literally the Kindle version is what, $9.99? So for $9.99, you can have admission to 2 days of 10 world-class speakers. And when I say world-class, I'm telling you, some of these speakers get paid normally $35,000, and they're doing it for me because we're friends. So this is the best of speakers, because as a professional speaker myself, I have a huge network. I've supported many other people through my podcast and other ways of supporting their book launch, and they're paying me back. And it's a beautiful and generous, but it's an unbelievable event for 2 days from the comfort of your home, to take in the information from what I consider like some of the best business minds in the world. So it's February 7th and 8th, selfemployedsummit.com. Registration actually is opening up. I mean, at the time we're doing this recording, actually is opening up this week. So
Fantastic.
Right
so
now
I can put the link.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, I said, it's literally the admission, because it was part of my book launch. That's why we made admission just purchasing the book. So this year I thought about doing it differently, but honestly, I can't put a price tag. Any price tag I would put on this event would be so expensive that I felt it would be prohibitive for self-employed people. And so I'm even telling people, it's like, look, even if you already own all 3 versions of the book, buy it for somebody else and give it to them. Because for $10 or $18, if you buy the paperback, you're not going to get into the door any cheaper than that. Like, just buy it and give it away then, if you already have all 3 versions. Because I didn't want to there's just no way of putting a price tag on it, because the quality of speakers is so incredible.
That's fantastic. I will definitely promote this for you and help more
you.
people, and hopefully people from UK. Come on, people, peeps, UK peeps.
Well, you know what? The UK, it's interesting you should say that, because before my book was published, first of all, UK is typically for my podcast, and we reach about 30,000 listeners a month. The UK is number 2, usually number 2. It bounces between 2 and 3. Canada and UK kind of go back and forth in popularity for my podcast. And when the book came out, my publisher contacted me and said, the UK sales team bought 3 times the number of your books as they do of their typical books.
Yeah.
And they said, why is that? I said, well, one, my podcast is popular there, but I since have come to learn from people in the UK that being self-employed in the UK is more respected than it is here in the US.
Really?
In the US, there's still a lot of stigma with it. And to call yourself self-employed in the US, I think it's changing a lot. And it's definitely one of my goals by doing the work that I do to change that. But there's still a bit of a stigma. And I just bought my condo in Miami. It took 7 months. Now, I've been in business for 37 years. Going through the banking process when you're self-employed is so ridiculous. I mean, it came down to, Antonina, at one point, the mortgage bank wanted a letter from my accountant that it was okay for me to use my business's money to pay my mortgage. I'm like, you really don't understand how self-employment works, do you? Like, that's the whole point. But what really killed me is that they wanted a letter from my accountant, who I've only known for 2 years. He's a new accountant. I've only known him for 2 years. But his opinion, because he had CPA after his name, meant more than my 37 years of running the business.
That's ridiculous. I never thought about
It's
that like that.
insulting.
Although I'm in tax, and I still help a small
Yeah.
accountancy firm to do their tax, to consult their top clients. And I never thought about that, but you're absolutely true. It is the same here in the
Yeah.
UK.
The stigma of being
If
self-employed,
it's a
particularly because of
limited company, one director, sole director, which is
yeah.
the equivalent, but you're taxed in a different way. They don't make problems.
No, and the whole notion that there's more stability. I mean, what killed me is I'm going through this process of thinking somebody at Burger King might have a better chance to getting this job because they have a quote unquote or a traditional job with a paycheck.
Yeah,
But there's
true.
you and I both, there's no stability at a corporate job today. You can walk in tomorrow and get a pink slip, especially under current circumstances. I've always said, I don't know that I could, and I so admire the individuals that I work with or that have joined the Business Institute. I so admire the people that are leaving the idea of stability of a traditional job for self-employment. But the fact of the matter is, I think there's more stability in self-employment today. At least I was jokingly say, at least it'll be a slow, painful death, right? You're not going to wake, you're not going to wake up tomorrow and go to work and
by choice.
Right. I mean, I do think there's more stability, but yet the world hasn't caught up with that. So interesting to me is I actually, from what I'm being told and by the results of book sales and the popular podcast, the UK responds really well to what it means to be self-employed. I think maybe even more than the US currently. I mean, there's a lot of stigma in the US about, so I think it exists everywhere. But from what I hear, the UK is a little more self-employed friendly than even the US is.
Well, it is more self-employed prone to be self-employed, because many people, especially during the lockdowns, they discovered that the corporate or whatever jobs they had either didn't satisfy them or restricted them to work from home only, and they wanted to protect. So they figured out they can do it on their own. And some of my clients are startups just like that.
Yeah,
they start
absolutely
with this. And the self-employed mindset, however, is slightly different in the UK, because that's my worry, and that's the reason why I keep telling everyone, before you start as self-employed, get the manual, get an expert to show you the steps so that you don't fall off the rail. And because that's your livelihood, that's your marriage, that's your relationship, that's your everything. If that falls, you become a monster to the people around you. You consume them, you break up.
Yeah, 100%. That's,
as a coach, me as a coach / consultant, that's what our
100%
duty is.
You're so right, because I mean, I love the idea of the Great Resignation. And I think, again, it goes back to that conscious evolution of the world where people are choosing to create. If we haven't learned that life is short in the last 2 years, I don't know what the hell it's going to take, right? So people are learning that, and they're deciding that they want to create the life. And I also always say of a crisis that it just sped up what was coming anyway, right? Millennials have been saying YOLO for decades. You only live once. Millennials have always said, I would prefer to work remotely. So this was all coming anyway. So I truly believe the Great Resignation is about people choosing the life they want to live. That's great. But like you, I also feel like, well, what is this going to look like in 3 to 5 years from now? If we don't help the masses that are leaving their corporate jobs for self-employment, if we don't make sure there's a substantial success rate, what will happen then to nations' economies, to people's sense of well-being, to marriages and relationships? So I definitely feel like my calling has been increased as an advocate, both as an advocate and as a supporter and coach, that's why I started the Business Institute, to make sure people get the education so that they do succeed. Because with millions and millions starting new business, we have in the US anyway, we have the highest rate of business filings in history. More people are filing. I would expect so.
Just in a quarter, in our small area, which is East Sussex, very small area, 75,000 applications for of one quarter.
Yep. It's breaking records all over the world.
And it breaks my heart knowing that 75% of these will fail because they don't have the, and then, you know, finances, savings and dreams and all this goes down the drain.
Yep, 100%. Like I said, that's you're speaking, you're singing my song. That's why I started the Business Institute, and that's why my friend said to me, well, you know, I was expressing my concerns, and that's why she said to me, well, why not you? And I'm like, you're right. Why should I sit back and wait for somebody to solve this problem?
I'm joining. Yep.
Well, we start the next cohort starts. We're just finishing. The current cohort finishes at the end of January. The second one begins in March. So we have 1 month in between the cohorts. We do 2 cohorts a year, and there's a month in between. So next one is March. But yeah, this is why we need this. Like, we need self-employed people to succeed. I've often thought another part of the advocacy I'd like to take on someday with the world of banking is to make, first of all, financing, get to receive funding when you're self-employed is extremely difficult. And that is because statistically the banks see it as a high risk. So what can we do to minimize the risk, right? Can we open banks to the idea of better lending if there's coaching required as part of the loan?
Exactly. And I try to work with our NatWest here. With the NatWest, I did try to work like 4 years ago to approach them to you know, create that nucleus so that you do the assessments, the financial assessment projections and all this, the planning, but from a different point of view, from a development growth point of view rather than the financial, you know. Banks really can help a lot. And if their way of thinking change, that will be very fresh and beautiful.
No, and it's about just increasing the success rate. You know, we don't, with the masses of people becoming self-employed, like I said, you and I are sharing a mission here that we're determined to increase the success rate of those businesses because everybody has so much on the line. And it's important that that we help people create healthy lives in all the main ways that it means to be healthy relationships, right? Healthy relationships, healthy lives, healthy society. Yeah, all that.
Okay, I'm not going to touch the political side of it because there are different interests, different levels there, but I totally share that with you. Okay, what are you curious about looking ahead? What is it that you want to figure out?
Ooh, love that. What I'm most curious about, which comes right back to a limited mindset. This is an admission of my limited mindset that I battle with all the time. I refer to it because I like to give things a name. I refer to it as my small number mindset. I come from a background as a photographer, being a very high-end photographer. I only photographed 150 people. It was very controlled. My volume is extremely controlled because I was the talent, and therefore it couldn't be scalable. So I photographed 150 people a year. I had an 8-week waiting list, so I never had a problem filling that volume. So I photographed 150 families a year. More than half, 75 to 80 of those were repeat clients. Either many of them were annual, but otherwise they were, you know, a year or two before. So on any given year, only 75 new people in the world needed to know I existed. Okay, because 75 were going to be previous clients. So think about it. So my brain for 37 years has been wired to small numbers and finding comfort in those small numbers. And that's the problem because I'm in a lot of ways introverted. And, you know, I definitely step out of the world in a huge, gigantic way because I want to make an impact. But, you know, by nature, I'm kind of introverted. So the small number mindset suits me well. And I've always found relief in, oh, good. I only had to meet 75 new people in the world and have my business reach its financial goals. That doesn't work anymore. Now I'm looking for global impact. We have students from Tokyo and Germany and Italy, as well as, of course, the US and Canada. We've, you know, students all over the world. So what I'm curious about is watching my openness to that type of global impact. I'm curious about the team that will be required. As we said into the new year, like I'm looking at needing a team of 9 or 10 people to support this business institute and everything around it. And 5 to 6 of them are in place now, but I know that there's more that are going to be needed. Like right now, I'm running the entire business institute. I would like to get an executive director who will manage, so I can focus on the content, the curriculum, and the students and the coaching. And that the executive director can concentrate on the launch of each cohort. So that has me more curious than anything. I guess what I'm saying is I'm curious about who I'm going to become in a way that is so foreign to who I've been, that I'm really curious about that.
Exciting.
Yeah, it is. And I, yeah, like I said, I smiled and I was like, huh, because I don't quite know who that person is yet.
Yeah, but that's the beauty
But
of
that's the
life,
curious.
isn't it?
It is.
And that's the
Yeah.
beauty of life, and allowing
Yeah.
yourself to evolve and embrace whatever unfolds, as you say.
Yeah.
And look in the mirror of that unfolding whatever, and you discover yourself new things,
Yeah.
and you grow. And yeah, that's beautiful. Thank
Well, that to me
you.
is the whole root of self-employment. I always say, being self-employed is like personal development on steroids. Like it's like, you're exposed to more,
Absolutely.
you're challenged more. Like it is going to, I actually think the root of self-employed people is that they are at their root, they're seekers. And
They're seekers. They're seekers. Definitely.
they're seekers.
Oh gosh, yes.
And they, because of that, they're open in the most beautiful way possible to who they can grow into. I mean, I say there's a quote in my book that has gotten a fair amount of tweets, that really being self-employed is about finding the biggest, boldest version of yourself. And I truly believe that. I mean, that was my personal challenge to myself. 14 years old, selling eggs door to door. It really started as a challenge to could I? I mean, that's a weird thing to sell, eggs, right? But I thought it was kind of interesting and compelling.
What kind of eggs? What kind of eggs?
They were chicken eggs. They were
okay,
chicken
so
yeah.
Not the dinosaur ones.
No.
And I didn't.
Other. Yeah, and I didn't grow up on a farm. I grew up in an area that was very remote, is very country. But I struck a deal with a local farmer. He raised the eggs. He raised the chickens. And I had this business idea, and I approached him about, well, what if I made a deal with him to sell. So I paid him $0.25 a dozen, and I sold them for $1.25 a dozen. So I made $1 a dozen of eggs. And I was 14 years old. I was below driving age, but I would drive my mother's car around neighborhoods. It was, I could barely see over the steering wheel.
Yeah, I know. But that nowadays, comparing the world of our kids today, that's amazing.
Yeah. And in so many ways, it really was about a personal challenge. And it's the same way I started my podcast. I've had my podcast since July of 2014. So it's been 7.5 years I've had a podcast, and it started as a personal challenge. I started it because I had wondered, I always felt like I used to call myself a professional guest, because I was the person that was showing up at people's homes to photographing them, asking for the bathroom. I was the speaker who showed up events to speak on the stage and asking for the bathroom, right? I always said I was like the permanent guest who always had to ask like where the bathroom is. And I began to question my own self-esteem. I began questioning, was I successful because of the doors I pushed open, or was I good enough that people wanted me? So I said, I've always been a guest. What if I was a host? So I chose to become a podcast host to see if anybody would show up.
It is scary, honestly. Isn't it? In the beginning, it's always scary.
I didn't know if guests would say yes. I didn't know if people would show up and listen. And, it's completely reframed.
Okay, now you're bringing up all my anxiety, remembering, because I went through all that, and I don't know why I did it. I still don't know what made me. I would never know. 2 years ago, I would never believe I would be sitting and doing this. Even video scared me. Audio scared me.
Yeah.
Right.
Personal challenge.
Personal challenge, but this is how we grow, and this is how 100%. We evolve. Right. So if I ask you, what is your vision for the small business in a conscious and conscientious world? What can you say? What is your vision?
Oh my gosh, my vision.
What do you want it to be?
I just think it's going to be such a beautiful and happy world. I really do. I think it will be a world where that most of us self-employed have known, you know, that we are doing the work that we're meant to do and that we're driven to do, and we can show up for our kids' ball games. You know, I believe in this. I think there's an opportunity for beautiful integration. You know, I was doing a keynote a few years ago around technology, as technology is advancing, continue to advance now with AI. But I said, you know, we have a choice that with technology in our businesses, we can make our customers feel like one of a million or one in a million. It's our choice.
Mm.
And I think there are so many ways today in business that we can have very successful businesses. It doesn't have to be as hard as we've been led to believe that it is
Yes.
to be successful. And I believe there will be a smoother integration in our lives where we work, we slide into our personal lives, take care of things, do things we love. I always said, you know, I remember this, I'm aging myself, but I can remember a long time ago when ATMs came out, and just like email, you know, people went all up in arms. Like, the world is getting so impersonal. Like, we're getting money from we used to go in and talk to the teller. Now we're just getting money out of a machine. And I was like, I don't want a relationship with a bank teller. That's not my dream. My dream is that technology enables me to do the transactional things in life quicker so that I can go have lunch with my kids. Right. So I don't want 10 minutes talking to standing in line, or 10, 15 minutes standing in line and talking to a bank teller. I want to walk into a vestibule, pull out cash, and run and meet my kids for lunch. That to me is what I envision as the life of the future. That we work, we put in the good work, we do that, we create a good impact, we slide into our personal lives, love what's in front of us, love where we live, spend time with those that we love, and then go back to work when needed. And it's a smoother transition. It's not this 9 to 5, go to work, have to commute. It's like, it can all be so fluid. So I guess that'd be the best word I see a work life that's a life in the future that's much more fluid than what we've been experiencing.
That's a beautiful vision. I like it. I
It's
want to
going
be
to happen.
part of it. Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully. I don't want to see any more people on the commute to London, coming back from London, 7 o'clock in the evening, husband and wife meeting in the train for an hour journey to have their dinner together in the train. On the train, sorry.
Yeah, and I think rigidity has to stop. But as I said, it's a shift. I think we're evolving from rigidity to fluidity.
Hopefully.
Yep.
Right. So usually at the end of my interviews, I ask these questions about 3 wisdoms. So would you please share 3 of your wisdoms with our listeners, with me as well?
Wow, we've already shared so many wisdoms. So one, I kind of mentioned really quickly that I believe business decisions should be life decisions first, right? What's the life decision you want to make? That's how I ended up in Miami. I'm a New Yorker. I came down here for 3 months 6 years ago and never left. Because once I got here, I made I made a decision to stay. So one wisdom is to really create the life and business of your dreams. Like, what's the life you want to live? The second wisdom I'll share, which is something I share in the book, which we didn't talk about, but it's also something that got a lot of attention unexpectedly for me. It's what I refer to as space switching. And what I mean by that is I live in an apartment in Miami. It's not huge, but I have several different workstations. I have I have an area where I do podcasts, stand-up desk. I have a place where I sit and pay bills. I have a different place that I stand at a stand-up desk that's a suction cup to windows that I face out of the ocean. And that's where I return emails and do work that is non-interactive with other people. So this idea of space switching it's a productivity hack, because we all know that, we've told a million times that lack of focus is a waste of time. The problem with that is that the most creative amongst us who tend to be self-employed, we innately see everything. We chase squirrels. And I don't think, again, it goes back to my root value of acceptance. I think we should accept that in people and stop trying to change them into somebody who they're not.
Mm.
I think we should accept our brain's inclination to chase shiny objects, because that actually is where your genius lies. So rather than forcing people to focus, what I suggest is space switching. Have several different places that you work. Each place has a different task. Okay, so what you do is you switch spaces. If you're going to do admin, pay bills, switch to that space. Your brain will instantly get into the task at hand. When you need to do, if you're writing articles or content, what's the best space for that? Go sit in a chair, like I sit outside on my terrace, because the ocean inspires the content that I'm going to write. Okay, so rather than forcing your brain to focus on one thing, set up different space environments that you can space switch. And in that space, your brain immediately gets into the task at hand, and it shortens the wind up and wind down period. So it's a productivity hack that's worked beautifully. It works specifically for more creative thinkers. The third piece of wisdom, which is really foundational to everything that I do, is, as I said earlier, while we can't control the results in life, we can't control the world, we really can't even control the results. The only thing you can control, which is what I teach, is the only thing you can control is the environment you create for the results you want. That is foundational to everything I do. Even by example, but like in the self-employed life, I teach the self-employed ecosystem, hug marketing, the productivity, the content marketing. I teach the strategies of the environment to attract the business you want. Whether it attracts it or not, we don't know. We don't know this. You can't control the results. The only thing you can control is the environment you set up for the results you want. My philosophy is, if you set up the right environment with the right strategies, you're giving yourself a 95% chance of success.
Absolutely.
Right? So you don't have to worry about the results then. Just worry on creating the environment for the results you want. Okay. It also applies even to my book, Lingo. My book, Lingo, is a very specific brand messaging strategy, but really what it is, it's creating the environment of words that you use to attract your ideal customers. So foundational to everything I do, which is the biggest wisdom I believe I can give your listeners, is we can't control the results. We can't control the world. All you can control is the environment you create for the results you want. So do the work and get the support, get the education and training you need to set up the right environment. And then you can let go and get the results and receive the results you want.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Jeffrey.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for coming here today. And I hope you will create more and more of your visions and see them happen with the right people, to spread the message to more and more self-employed, lost, but searching individuals. And hopefully,
well, you can count on it. This is where this is all I'm doing. This is it.
It will happen. So yes. Thank you very much, Jeffrey, for being today in my tiny little space of empowering the conscious evolution. So hopefully more people will come and listen to us. Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye now.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
And that was your inspiration to continue empowering your conscious business evolution today. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I hope our conversations will help you take your own steps toward innovating and evolving as a conscious business by making choices for the benefit of people, communities, and environment. If you have any questions to my guests, I will leave their contact details in the description of this post. If you'd like to come to the show and share your wisdom, you're more than welcome. Please write to me to Antonina@visionsinspire.com. But definitely have a listen to all previous interviews and do subscribe to the Visions Inspire YouTube channel for my next show for more inspiration on being part of our conscious business evolution together. Please give Visions Inspire your like on Facebook and follow on Twitter and Instagram. And do share with others to listen, spread the word, grow the knowledge. That's the spirit of the conscious business evolution. Till next time, from me, Antonina Manev, your business growth strategist, turning visions into profitable businesses, and always here to empower the conscious business evolution. Thank you, and till next time.